Brothers and sisters, listen closely. There comes a moment in every person's life when the smile fades, the excitement drains, and the joy they chased slips through their fingers like water. It feels mysterious, unfair, almost personal. But today, I want to reveal the truth hidden beneath that feeling, a truth powerful enough to reshape the way you walk through life. Happiness doesn't vanish because life is cruel, it vanishes because we misunderstand what it truly is. Most people treat happiness like a destination, a place you will finally arrive at once everything goes your way. So they wait for better circumstances, better timing, better people, better luck. But waiting is the fastest way to ensure happiness stays out of reach. Happiness is not something you chase, it is something you practice. Think of your mind like a garden. If you do not plant intentionally, weeds will grow automatically. Doubt, distraction, comparison, fear, these weeds do not need permission. They appear the moment you stop tending to yourself, and many people wonder why they feel empty, not realizing they have abandoned the very garden they live in. Your happiness doesn't last because you rely on moments instead of mastering your mind. When you attach your joy to outcomes, you become a slave to circumstances. But when you attach your joy to awareness, discipline, and presence, you finally step into freedom. True happiness is built, not found. It is trained, not gifted. It is strengthened through daily choices, not sudden miracles. So let me ask you, how often do you sit in silence and observe your thoughts without judging them? How often do you breathe with intention before reacting? How often do you choose gratitude before complaint or purpose before comfort? These small, invisible decisions, they decide everything, because the real source of lasting happiness is not pleasure, it is clarity. Clarity of who you are, clarity of what you value, clarity of how you choose to show up in this world. And once you see this, once you understand that happiness is a skill you can cultivate, you stop being a victim of life's waves and begin to surf them with confidence. Now is your moment. Do not leave this message inspired but unchanged. Start today, not tomorrow, not later, not when life settles down. Commit to training your mind the way a warrior trains their body, with intention, with discipline, and with courage. The idea that happiness is not something you chase but something you practice reshapes the entire foundation of how most people approach their emotional life. From childhood onward, many are conditioned to believe that happiness is an external reward granted only when certain conditions align. Success must be achieved, problems must disappear, and life must present itself in a smooth, comfortable sequence. But this belief system sets a trap. It trains the mind to look outward for satisfaction, to measure joy by circumstances, and to depend on fleeting moments to feel whole. When the moment passes, as all moments inevitably do, the happiness built upon it dissolves, leaving a sense of loss or confusion. Practicing happiness requires reversing this conditioning. It demands a shift from passive expectation to active cultivation, from emotional dependence to emotional responsibility. Think of it this way: any skill you want to master, whether it is strength, discipline, creativity, or compassion, requires repetition, awareness, and continuous refinement. Happiness is no different. The mind left unattended leans toward worry, comparison, and dissatisfaction because these patterns are biologically rooted in survival instincts. The brain was designed to scan for threats, not blessings. It was built to keep you alive, not fulfilled. So if you do not train it, it will default to instinct rather than intention. Practicing happiness is the deliberate effort to guide your mind back to presence when it drifts into fear, to gratitude when it drifts into scarcity, to clarity when it drifts into confusion. This practice does not eliminate difficulties, but it equips you with the resilience to navigate them without losing your inner balance. To practice happiness, you must also become aware of the subtle choices that shape your internal landscape, the thoughts you entertain, the words you speak to yourself, the expectations you cling to, and the interpretations you give to experiences. These are the daily building blocks of emotional well-being. Most people underestimate how powerful these micro choices are because they appear insignificant in the moment. But happiness is not built in dramatic breakthroughs, it is built in the quiet patterns established over days, weeks, and years. Training the mind to seek understanding instead of judgment, to appreciate instead of complain, and to observe instead of react strengthens an inner foundation that remains steady even when external situations change rapidly. This practice also involves emotional honesty. Many chase constant positivity, believing that happiness requires suppressing discomfort. But real happiness cannot grow in denial, it grows in authenticity. When you allow yourself to feel fully without being consumed, to acknowledge your emotions without becoming their prisoner, you build a relationship with yourself that is grounded and trustworthy. Practicing happiness is not about forcing joy, it is about cultivating alignment, aligning your actions with your values, your thoughts with truth, and your presence with the realities of the moment. The more you engage in this practice, the more you realize that happiness is not something gained from the outside, but awakened from the mind. Much like a garden responds to whatever is planted within it, whether intentionally or unconsciously. When left unattended, it does not remain empty or neutral. It becomes overgrown with automatic patterns that thrive without effort. These patterns, doubt, comparison, impatience, fear, distraction, behave exactly like weeds. They require no invitation, no planning, no nurturing. They appear simply because the mind by nature is active and constantly processing, and yet many people are surprised when these mental weeds dominate their inner world, wondering why peace feels distant or why happiness fades so quickly. They overlook the fundamental truth that a garden neglected will never produce what they desire. It will only produce what grows by default. Understanding this reveals the necessity of mindful cultivation, not as a luxury, but as a responsibility. Every thought that goes unexamined becomes a seed that may take root. A single moment of comparison, if replayed repeatedly, becomes a habit of self-judgment. A brief fear about the future, if left unaddressed, expands into chronic anxiety. A minor irritation, if indulged, transforms into a reactive personality. This is how the garden of the mind evolves without your permission. It is not that negative thoughts are inherently wrong or dangerous, they are natural. The issue arises when you allow them to anchor themselves deeply, becoming the dominant vegetation in your internal landscape. When weeds take over, even the most beautiful seeds of happiness struggle to grow, not because they lack potential, but because the environment no longer supports their development. This is why conscious awareness is essential. Tending to your inner garden means observing what grows within you without judgment, but with clarity. It means noticing when your thoughts begin drifting toward resentment or comparison and gently guiding them back, just as a gardener would redirect a stray vine. It means recognizing when your attention is being pulled by distractions and bringing it back to the present moment, where true living happens. It means acknowledging the emotional storms that rise within you while maintaining the understanding that storms pass. They do not define the climate of your mind unless you let them. This level of awareness is not achieved through occasional effort. It requires consistent practice, just like watering and pruning a real garden. Furthermore, the garden metaphor reminds us that growth takes time. Seeds of gratitude, patience, discipline, and clarity do not sprout instantly. They require repeated actions that strengthen them gradually. When you choose, cannot control. Mastering the mind, however, means creating an internal source of stability that does not collapse every time life moves in an unexpected direction. It is the difference between being carried away by the current and learning how to swim with purpose through the waves. Attaching happiness to outcomes is one of the most common traps. When you believe you will finally be happy once you get the promotion, fall in love, finish the project, or reach a certain milestone, you unknowingly postpone your well-being. You place your emotional state on hold, waiting for an external event to grant you permission to feel fulfilled. But even when the outcome arrives, the satisfaction is short-lived. The mind immediately searches for the next target, the next achievement, the next missing piece. This endless chase creates a cycle of anticipation, brief relief, and renewed dissatisfaction. Mastering the mind interrupts this cycle by teaching you to derive fulfillment from who you are becoming, not what you are obtaining. Mastery also includes understanding the difference between reaction and response. When you rely on external triggers for happiness, you react to life instead of directing your inner state. A compliment lifts you, a criticism crushes you, a good day energizes you, a difficult day drains you, a success boosts your confidence, a setback destroys your motivation. This reactive pattern leaves your emotional well-being constantly exposed and fragile. Mastering the mind means learning how to observe these external events without allowing them to dictate your inner equilibrium. It is choosing to respond with awareness rather than reacting impulsively. It is recognizing that your emotional state is not a product of the world, but a product of the meaning you assign to the world. Another layer of mastery involves cultivating inner clarity. Without clarity, the mind becomes entangled in confusion, overthinking, and imagined fears. These mental tangles consume energy and distort perception, making happiness difficult to sustain even in peaceful circumstances. Clarity brings alignment. It helps you understand what truly matters, what deserves your focus, and what you can release. With clarity, your mind becomes less polluted by unnecessary worries and more rooted in present awareness. You begin to experience moments more fully, not because they are perfect, but because you are fully present. This presence creates a quiet strength, a foundation of contentment that does not vanish the moment something shifts around you. The small invisible decisions you make throughout the day may seem insignificant in the moment, but they accumulate into the emotional architecture of your entire life. Most people believe their happiness is determined by major events, promotions, relationships, financial gains or losses. Yet what truly shapes one's inner world are the subtle, almost unnoticeable choices made repeatedly: how you speak to yourself when no one hears you, how you interpret a setback, how you breathe during conflict, how you treat your own thoughts when they begin to wander into negativity. These micro decisions form the mental habits that either support lasting peace or silently undermine it. Happiness is rarely lost in a single moment. It is slowly drained by a series of unnoticed choices that pull you away from alignment. Every day you are confronted with countless mental crossroads. When irritation arises, you have a split second to decide whether to fuel it or to breathe through it. When self-doubt whispers, you choose either to accept the narrative or question it. When comparison emerges, you decide whether to indulge it or redirect your focus onto your own path. Each of these choices is small, but over time they reinforce the pathways your mind naturally follows. If you repeatedly choose reaction over reflection, chaos over calm, and judgment over understanding, your mind becomes conditioned to operate from that. Conditioning becomes your emotional default, shaping how you perceive yourself and the world long before you consciously realize it. And these decisions are made even in the simplest moments. How you begin your morning sets the tone for the entire day. A moment of stillness, gratitude, or intentional breathing can create mental clarity that influences countless interactions. Likewise, grabbing your phone the moment you wake up, feeding your mind with noise and comparison before your own thoughts have even settled, unconsciously seeds the day with tension. A few quiet minutes may seem trivial compared to the demands of a busy schedule, but they create the mental space in which awareness grows. Awareness then empowers better decisions, and better decisions ultimately create a more stable inner life. The power of these small decisions lies in their repetition. Just as a single drop of water cannot carve stone, but repeated drops over time can shape entire landscapes, your small choices gradually sculpt the architecture of your mind. A single choice to pause instead of react may not change much in one moment, but repeated pauses build emotional resilience. One decision to appreciate rather than complain may seem small, but repeated appreciation trains your mind to naturally notice abundance rather than lack. One moment of conscious breathing during stress may feel insignificant, but over time it teaches your nervous system to remain steady instead of collapsing into overwhelm. These decisions are invisible to others, but deeply visible to your inner world. No one hears the conversations you have with yourself or witnesses the battles between your impulses and your intentions, yet these quiet moments define you far more than public achievements ever could. The quality of your daily choices shapes the quality of your consciousness, and when your consciousness shifts even subtly, even quietly, your experience of life transforms from the inside outward. Clarity is often spoken about as if it were a simple idea, yet it is one of the rarest inner states a person can achieve. Most human beings navigate life clouded by assumptions, unexamined beliefs, hurried thoughts, and emotional noise. Without clarity, even the most joyful moments feel incomplete because the mind is too tangled to fully receive them. You may experience a temporary sense of ease, but confusion, doubt, or unresolved inner conflicts soon distort the feeling. This is why happiness that relies on outward conditions cannot endure. The internal lens through which you interpret life is fogged. When clarity is absent, your perception becomes fragmented, and fragmented perception creates fragmented emotions. Happiness slips away not because it is fragile, but because it cannot anchor itself in a mind that is not still enough to hold it. Clarity begins with self-understanding, the willingness to look inward without fear, without self-deception, and without running from the truths you uncover. Many avoid this inner work because it feels uncomfortable. They keep themselves busy, distracted, or constantly stimulated in order to avoid sitting with their own thoughts. Yet without turning inward, without exploring your own patterns, motivations, and triggers, you remain a stranger to yourself. And when you are a stranger to yourself, your happiness will always feel unstable because you cannot build stability on a foundation you do not fully know. Clarity invites you to ask deeper questions. Why do certain things affect you so strongly? What assumptions shape your reactions? Which beliefs serve you and which ones hold you back? These questions are not meant to criticize, they are meant to illuminate. Another dimension of clarity involves understanding what truly matters to you. Without this understanding, you move through life driven by inherited expectations, social pressures, or impulses that feel urgent but carry no meaning. You chase achievements that callings of billion night don't fulfill you, pursue validation that doesn't satisfy you, and cling to goals that were never yours to begin with. When your actions are misaligned with your inner truth, even the moments that appear successful from the outside feel hollow on the inside. Clarity allows you to filter out the noise, the opinions, comparisons, and distractions, so you can prioritize the values and intentions that actually bring you peace. With clarity, you stop confusing motion with progress, busyness with purpose, and stimulation with joy. Clarity also transforms the way you experience the present moment. A fogged mind constantly revisits the past or anticipates the future, making it nearly impossible to inhabit the now. You may be physically present, but mentally scattered. Without clarity, the mind jumps from thought to thought, judgment to judgment, fear to fear, creating a restless inner environment. But when clarity is cultivated, the noise begins to quiet. You become aware of your thoughts rather than controlled by them. You listen without immediately interpreting. You observe without rushing to react. In that stillness, even ordinary moments begin to feel richer, more meaningful, more complete. Presence becomes available not because life has become perfect, but because your mind is no longer tangled. This clarity ultimately becomes a form of strength. When you understand yourself, your values, and your thoughts with honesty, you are no longer easily swayed by circumstances or overwhelmed by emotional waves. You make choices with intention instead of impulse. You respond with awareness instead of reactivity. You navigate challenges with steadiness instead of panic. Clarity becomes the foundation upon which lasting happiness can rest, because it brings coherence to your inner world. When your inner world becomes coherent, aligned, understood, and illuminated, happiness no longer needs to be chased. It naturally arises from the space you have created within yourself. Cultivating happiness as a skill requires embracing the understanding that inner strength is not an accidental quality you stumble into. It is something that must be trained deliberately, the same way the body is strengthened through disciplined practice. Many people assume that emotional stability, resilience, and inner peace come naturally to those who are fortunate or gifted, but in reality, these qualities are built through repetition, awareness, and effort. Just as a muscle weakens without use, the mind becomes fragile without intentional training. Training your mind means choosing to confront discomfort rather than flee from it, choosing discipline over temporary pleasure, and choosing presence over distraction. These choices are not glamorous or instantly rewarding, but they forge a depth of character that allows happiness to remain steady even when life becomes turbulent. Training your mind begins with recognizing your patterns. You cannot strengthen what you do not understand. Many live their entire lives reacting automatically to stress, conflict, uncertainty, or disappointment without ever questioning whether their reactions are habitual rather than conscious. When you pause long enough to observe your own tendencies, you begin to see where your inner work lies. Do you panic quickly? Do you avoid difficult conversations? Do you spiral into overthinking? Do you turn outward for reassurance whenever something feels uncertain? Each of these patterns reveals an area where your inner strength is waiting to be developed. And developing that strength requires consistent training, not occasional effort. Another aspect of mental training involves learning to sit with discomfort instead of immediately escaping it. The modern world offers endless ways to distract yourself: entertainment, notifications, food, noise, and busyness. These distractions temporarily numb emotional discomfort, but prevent you from building resilience. When you learn to stay with your feelings, observe them, and allow them to pass without being overwhelmed, you develop a profound emotional stability. You become someone who can face inner storms without collapsing under their weight. This ability, cultivated slowly and repeatedly, becomes a powerful foundation for lasting happiness because it prevents you from being thrown off balance by every passing mood or external event. Mental training also requires discipline, not a harsh discipline that demands perfection, but a compassionate discipline that commits to growth even when motivation fades. Motivation is fleeting by nature. It rises in moments of inspiration and fades in moments of challenge. Discipline, however, carries you forward when motivation disappears. It is discipline that keeps you practicing presence when your mind wants to drift. It is discipline that keeps you choosing gratitude when negativity feels easier. It is discipline that helps you speak to yourself with patience when criticism comes more naturally. This internal discipline builds trust within yourself, and that trust becomes the root of a deeper, more resilient happiness. Finally, training your mind invites you to adopt a long-term perspective. Growth is not linear. Some days you will feel steady and wise, and other days you will fall back into old habits. The purpose of training is not to eliminate struggle, but to strengthen your ability to rise from it. When you commit to this path, every challenge becomes an opportunity to train your inner world. Over time, the mind becomes more spacious, more aware, and more grounded, not because life has become easier, but because you have become stronger from within.